Whoa, it's the illusion for some book review time. National bestseller, Hellhound on His Trail by Hampton Sides. And if you're following my book review, you'll know that Hampton Sides, Blood and Thunder is one of my favorite books. And Hampton Side does it again. This book is all about James Earl Ray. Who is James Earl Ray? Who is James Earl Ray? He's the dude who assassinated Martin Luther King. Who is Martin Luther King? And I ask that seriously because I think everybody has forgotten who Martin Luther King is. Martin Luther King was the great civil rights activist who changed the way we live, dude. So this book is all about James Earl Ray and the manhunt to find him by the FBI, dude, because he almost got away with it. And he escaped and made it as far as London, and he was on his way to Rhodesia to join Ian Smith and the, the racist armies in Africa. And the FBI gets in there and tracks him down, dude, because nobody gets away from the FBI. But the irony was that J. Edgar Hoover was hugely anti-Martin Luther King. And the FBI was so worried that they were going to come across as the dudes who assassinated King. In fact, people thought that the FBI assassinated King or had something to do with it, that they went triple duty to make sure they caught the assassination of Martin Luther King. And it really gets into how, this is the first time a lot of, the forensic labs really kicked in, and just how they go about, finding James Earl Ray, because James Earl Ray was the lone gunman. He was just a lone dude, man, creeping around, doing his thing, and Martin Luther King was his target. And he gets him in Memphis. And there's a lot of interesting stuff about Martin Luther King in this book, man. I didn't know he was a big drinker. I didn't know he smoked cigarettes, dude. But don't confuse and he was a big adulterer. But don't confuse the message with the man, right? But you know what? Reading this book, because I download I've always been reading Martin Luther King speeches, and I've got them on my iTunes, and I listen to them all the time, dude. And what is everybody doing? Martin Luther King lays it out pretty clearly what needs to occur to have unity. And this is a guy who believed in the Constitution, by the way, dude. He believed in changing the system from within the system. I would think Martin Luther King would be, turning in his grave if he saw how that there's this separation that occurred. Because he was all about the dignity of man. That was Martin Luther King's thing, was the dignity of man. Go be a person who takes care of your family. Go be a man, essentially. Don't go be, look, man, there's so many tangents you can go reading this book because, we live in this weird racially divisive time right now with the white privilege and the Black Lives Matter. Dude, Martin Luther King would be pissed about both those concepts, dude. He was all about the unity of people, man. He was all about getting past the color of your skin and getting to the content of your character. It doesn't matter what your skin color is if you're an asshole. That's what we got going on here, is people preaching hate, man. People preaching hate. This dude died because he didn't believe in hate. And what is hate? Martin Luther King knew that he was a target, man. He had no confusion about people were going to try to assassinate him in his life. In fact, his final speeches are pretty interesting because he was quite aware that his time was up. But Martin Luther King wasn't a dude who was like, I want armed bodyguards. I want a bunch of people with guns around me. He believed in nonviolence so radically that he was willing to die for it, dude. Right? Do people really believe in their cause enough to die for it, dude? Homie put his money where his mouth is, man. His mouth where his money is. I always forget that one. Anyway, so, you know, as a guy who listens to a lot of Martin Luther King speeches, man, I don't know where we've gone off the rails of a nation, but Martin Luther King was super aware of the underlying powers that be tinkering with the system, man. Tinkering with human beings and plotting them against one another. That was what Martin, if you listen to his speeches, he was super clear that you have to be aware that anybody who pits one man against another man is to be questioned. Any system that pits one man against another man is to be questioned. Any system that pits male against female is to be questioned. Look, dude, people seem to have lost their way, dude. People think that I mean, I don't even want to go down some of these tangents, man, because they're just so volatile nowadays. All I know, man, is people have missed the boat about what's going on, dude. Dude, it's not about who owns guns. It's not about the color of your skin, dude. It's about taking care of your family. That was the thing Martin Luther King was really about, was take care of your family. Keep it together, man. You want to know why the black community is falling apart and is having its ass kicked back into poverty? Is because of the destruction of the single family unit. Where are the fathers? Where are the fathers that are supposed to be teaching these young men how to be men? Where are the fathers teaching their daughters how to be daughters? When did abortion become a form of contraception? It's not about the color of your skin, and this is affecting all of our communities. We've come to believe that the single family home is somehow like stupid, dude. You know what's stupid? Is raising kids without parents, man. As a new father, I can't imagine letting my son be raised without a father. Like that's ridiculous. So what's the real problem? And Martin Luther King constantly addresses what the real problem is, man. The real problem is the content of your character, not the color of your skin. And he was quite aware that the only way that they were ever going to fix America was to take some sort of self-care. To look at yourself in the mirror and go, I'm not going to look like a hoodlum. I'm not going to dress like a hoodlum. I'm not going to act like a hoodlum. I'm going to act like a righteous human being, man. And so, you know, since Martin Luther King died and got assassinated in 1968. By the way, you know who gets assassinated 2 months later in 1968? Bobby Kennedy. I don't know. Call it a conspiracy. Call it what you will, dude. But look, man, for those of you guys who are out there think, oh, well, dude, James Earl Ray was getting Martin Luther King no matter what, dude. Like, that was his mission, dude. In fact, James Earl Ray had escaped from prison and was a fugitive from justice, dude, when he shot Martin Luther King. So, this book, if you dare to read it, will activate all sorts of thoughts about where we are. Because I constantly tell you, dude, you can't know where we are in history if you don't know where we've been in history. And you can't know where we're going in history if you don't know where we've been, dude. Because history repeats itself. History is here for you to decipher. Yeah, they say to the victor goes that the victor creates the history, and that's absolutely true, dude, because it's all a fiction, man. That's the thing. But, you know, Hampton Sides is a pretty radical dude. He just breaks it down the way it is. He's clear about how he has agendas and doesn't, and his agendas are dispelled. This book is about a lone man taking out one of the greatest human beings ever to walk the face of the earth. But this great human being that walks the face of the earth, and it goes into a lot about it, was a fallible man. Yeah, he had God. He was fully tied in with God, but he wasn't perfect by any sense of the word, dude. But he was not afraid. That is the thing that you really get from this book, is Martin Luther King was not afraid of any man on this planet, dude. And that's what it is. That's when people tell you, you know, that's the thing, man. Like, on the final note, dude, the gun grabbers, they're full of it, dude. All the political gun grabbers will not relinquish their armed security, dude. What? You think Hillary Clinton ain't gonna de-arm her security force, dude? You think these jackasses aren't gonna, like, look, I'm one of those. Everyone should have a gun or nobody should have a gun, dude. But then again, dude, if you check out the news lately, dude, up in British Columbia, dude just went in with a hammer and started smacking people in the head, dude. So, you know, I don't know, man. I don't know, dude. All I know is you should probably go to iTunes and download some Martin Luther King speeches and listen to him, dude. And listen to what he really has to say about what is going on in America in the 60s, because we've gone backwards. We have taken the words of Martin Luther King and pissed on them. Yeah, everybody is pissing on the memory of Martin Luther King. Go listen to Martin Luther King and wake up, man. Anyway, dude. This is a good book, dude. Hampton Sides, Hellhound on His Trail, dude. Highly recommending this book. Highly recommending this book.